couple of slides I wanted to show you from a study that made in England that compared, and I'm going to try to make a really good point here about clicks and the actual activation of account. But if we look at the number of clicks that it takes to open an account, and you can look in the top, and it's mostly dominated by the fintechs and the neobanks. And then you go to the bottom and you see more of the traditional banks that you know, like HSBC and others. You can see we start at 24 clicks to open an account with Revolt and Starling Bank and Monzo, 38, 45 clicks, all the way to 120 clicks. Good, good. Now the problem is, let's take a look at, okay, I did the 24 clicks. How long does it take me to actually use the account or activate the account? If we look at the activation of the accounts, it's very surprisingly, Barclays jumped to -- 1. So in 2 days after you fill, even if you did a lot more clicking, they actually activate your account the fastest. Versus you look at some of those Revolt, which was #1 in clicking, very few clicks. It took them a day longer, which is 33% longer than Barclays and Monzo. Some traditional banks have really a problem. If you look at HSBC, it takes 36 days to activate an account. That's, to me, is amazing. 120 clicks, okay, I created and filled the application, but it takes me 36 days to actually use it. That's definitely a problem for the traditional banks. So if we look back on this onboarding process, we find there is 4 pillars for this onboarding process to be successful. #1 is compliance. You have to actually figure out compliance and make sure. It doesn't make sense for you to have 3 clicks and create an account that is not compliant with regulation. You'll be closed the second day. The speed of the process. Clicking is great, less clicks, but I need to activate my account very fast and I want to be able to use it. The third pillar is user friendliness. It has to be, I myself experienced how frustrating some of these banks in their process, and the experience of the onboarding process was very cumbersome. And then you need the managerial dashboard for the banks to actually be able to manage this onboarding process, to see who is onboarding and the approval process. And all that needs very sophisticated dashboards on the bank side to manage the onboarding and make sure that it keeps moving with the approvals very smoothly. The most important things about those pillars is when you're talking about, okay, I want to do the onboarding and I want to do it on any smart device and I want to do it anytime, fantastic. It has to be secure. So basically that the security comes as #1 priority, because you don't want to compromise the customer's data, and you want to balance that security with the user experience. And this is really a tough balance that a lot of system designers struggle with, because a secure system, that means you need to do a lot of checkings and a lot of work, versus when you are looking at the speed and the user experience, you want less of that. So how you balance both of them and come up with a workable solution that satisfies the customer and meet their expectation is a big challenge in designing the system. When you try to move to a digital onboarding, Brother Anwar talked about multiple things that you have to do. I try to summarize what I think from our internal experience at Path Solutions, where did we focus in designing our digital onboarding system? First of all, you have to actually do an amazing segmentation, and I call it the segmentation of 1, which means that you have to have so much big data, you have to have so much intelligence that allow you to know really your customer, not anymore by large segments. Oh, they are teenagers, or they are young professionals, or they are seniors. No, that's not good enough, because in each segment, there are so many specific attributes to each individual. So you need to understand the behavior, and there is a huge science behind that. It's called the behavior science that everybody right now is looking at in the technology and trying to tie the behavior science with the technology. So you really understand the consumer and the customer and your potential, and design and target the onboarding process and design it, target it to that customer. And it has to be delivered through omni-channel. So basically you cannot anymore just do it through a computer or desktop or a laptop. You have to provide it through any smart device anywhere. You have to be always on the top of your compliance and regulatories. And we're talking about here the eKYC, the AML screening. Those are regulations that central banks basically focus on, and the banks and the fintechs have to adhere to these regulations. And by the way, on the onboarding, a lot of companies now, especially in the West, they use electronic services that do eKYC and the verification of identity, that they do AML screening. The traditional way of doing it is you have a system inside the bank that does all this for you, and you have all this information. But now you have access to big data, and you have access to tremendous amount of information that you can actually do those verifications. And there are some really good companies worldwide that offer services on the cloud that you can actually connect through open APIs that we talked about and get those services. You have to shape your customer's journey. Everything that is in the system has to be based on customer journeys. You have to draw your customer journey like a director draws the story of a movie, and you basically decide what are the steps the customer has to go through in this condition and this condition, etc., and make that journey very, very pleasant. And then you need to collect, measure, and test. You collect the data, you measure the effectiveness of your solutions, and you test it over and over. And this is, by the way, a continuous process. That's where technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, and all that comes to play, because you're not just putting a system and you're done. You need to continuously collect the data, analyze the data, test your system, how the acceptance of it, collect information and survey the customer, and continuously enhancing the system. And some of this enhancement can be automated. When you have AI, it can actually self-improve the process. And then the final point here is you need to blend technology and a human experience. Brother Anwar talked about how important the human interaction is also important. So don't think about this as a technology solution completely. You really need to blend it with human experience and bring your bank brand through this experience, and don't rely 100% on technology and leave your customers stranded dealing with only technology. But they need a backup of a human experience.